Hey there! This is your tutorial for day 3 of the curriculum. This is going to be Monday, October 1st. So the big objectives this class are to work with Brant and the idea of literacy sponsorship for the first time in depth, to get them situated for working with their own timeline and their own literacy history in relation to Brandt's ideas, and then to get them moving toward the literacy narrative for next time, which they're going to have a draft of. So, required materials to bring to class. I say here paper copies of prompt 1. It's probably a good idea if you're not in a computer lab just to give them the first prompt. The next ones you don't necessarily have to do that for. But for the first one it can make things a bit smoother since they're unfamiliar with the format of the activities anyway. The other thing which I don't list here, you may want to bring copies of the show versus tell worksheet that I made. You can use that as a worksheet. You could also use it projected onto the screen, probably just as well. But as a worksheet, it's sort of more user-friendly, I suppose. But take a look at that and decide if you want to bring copies of that or not. So, in the curriculum, I talk about how on this day is a good day to start getting students to sign up for printing their posters. I think we're going to wait on that probably until the following week. I don't think the timeline's quite as crunched as we thought it was initially, so we'll hold off on that since you've got enough stuff to introduce them to right now anyway. So the first activity is directly responding to reading Deborah Brandt's piece. This is a partner activity where you are having them sit down together and write responses to a couple of questions. I suggest you might want to give them index cards to write them on so that they can have a sort of space to fill up completely. That can often limit them in the amount of space they have, but focus them on saying something in that amount of space. They can also do it on a sheet of paper. The questions are, one, ask them to talk about the two styles of reading that they did, reading with reading audio and then reading using the says-does outline. These two things have different things to offer, different constraints, and you're asking them to think about that. And then in the second question, you're asking them to pull out a few different sections of Brandt's argument to give a thesis for it, and then pull out a few different paragraphs for that. At the end, you're giving them maybe 10 or 15 minutes to work on that, and then spend 10 minutes or so sharing back with the class a few answers. You don't need to get to every answer necessarily. If they write it on an index card, collect all of those, and you can just look through them, but that's a sort of casual activity, so you don't need to worry about grading that. Next activity after that, they're going to share in the same pairs, or you could regroup them, whatever you want. They are sharing their literacy timelines, which should be complete. These are a piece of homework that you can collect and mark points on if you're planning to. But what they're going to do is they're going to read it through with somebody else and try and identify 3 different moments. We call them centers of gravity. 3 different stories or objects or people that have some interest behind them, that a story could be told about them. From there, as much time as you have, you can devote to actually free writing through some of those moments. So there's a series of 4 free write questions listed here in the notebook that are meant to be the focus for one of those timeline moments. So one timeline moment, they do the 4 free write questions in response to it. If you have time, you can go back and have them do another one and another one. All of these are ways to get them to generate ideas and text about one of these moments. So the more of them you have, the more likely they are to have diversity and interest in whatever they produce for the eventual literacy narrative. The other big time-consuming activity for today is the showing versus telling discussion. I'd like you to read through both the free write progression and the showing and telling and decide where you want to balance your time. You could productively balance it one way or the other, but I'll leave that up to you. I have it set for 15 minutes. It really could be done in 10 minutes probably, might even be able to be done in 8 minutes if you move really fast through it, but decide for yourself. There is a handout on Canvas that goes along with the showing and telling activity. It basically breaks down the concept for you as you explain it, provides an example that you guys can go through on the board, where a passage is told and then shown, the same passage. And then the other page of that handout is a worksheet where they are given a passage that either shows or tells, and they're asked to identify which one it is and how they know, and then to try and flip it to the other form. So what happens if you take a passage that's just told as fact and put it into an evocative point of view story? So that one takes a little while, but can be a really fun activity to see what they come up with. The upshot there is that you're trying to push them toward sort of more creative narrative writing as opposed to summative thesis-based writing, which means putting it in a point of view within the story, giving it sensory details, making it immersive for the reader as opposed to declarative to the reader about what this means. We're trying to move toward a more abstract form of meaning making here. So look through that worksheet, look through the description of the activity, and decide how much time you want to devote to it. If you devote just the time that's on here, that's perfectly fine. But this day can get a little tight, so make those decisions for yourself. Final thing you're doing together is going over the Project 1 prompt. The whole class has been leading to this. So this is worth spending a few minutes on. I would pass them out, read them through together, maybe read the first page or the first section of it together, have them look over it in pairs perhaps, so that they can read it through and debate what it means. But just hit through the most essential parts, that it's the story of one moment, not about a whole lifetime or a whole period of time, that it should in some way show literacy sponsorship at work. But it shouldn't be discussing literacy sponsorship as an academic concept, and that the title should be a quotation from Deborah Brandt that they can edit if they want to, or they can excerpt in full, whichever. You're going to have an in-class peer review of this next time, so they should bring printed copies if they are not in a lab, and if they are in a lab, they can use a digital copy. Make sure they understand that the rough draft for this workshop is due before class starts on Canvas. So that's going to be really unusual from previous classes, and they might well forget. So just be sure that they remember. If they do forget, you can be a little forgiving if you want to, as long as they post it during class. But I'll leave that up to you too. For any time you're doing something for the first time, something can go wrong, and I like to be a little forgiving of that if I can. The final thing to note is that you should probably make clear how penalties work on workshop days, that they can earn a penalty for missing a workshop day, and they can earn a penalty for not turning in a workshop draft. And if they do both of those things on the same day, they get 2 penalties. If they miss class but do turn in a workshop draft, that's only 1 for the absence. If they are in class but don't have a workshop draft, that's also 1 for the missed workshop draft. So just let them know that there's stakes to missing next class and not turning in the draft. They might not expect that going in. That is it. It's a action-packed day, really building up for getting them working on the literacy narrative. With any luck, they will come back with rich and interesting literacy narratives for workshop next time. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.